I am Hongxia, a non-executive corporate director of Sannam S4. Established in 2008, Sannam S4 works with nearly 400 organizations, including leading universities and colleges, corporations, trade associations, and other nonprofit organizations, and also government agencies. We support this organization to explore, enter, and expand into international markets, especially high-growth markets throughout the world. Today, we focus on university and colleges. In the past 10 years, Sannam S4 has been supporting some of the leading universities and colleges with their international strategy and global operations, including international student recruitment, among many critical needs for their global expansion. As we all know, COVID-19 pandemic has provided many unprecedented challenges for universities and colleges, especially in their international strategy, presence, and operation. Thank you for joining us today in the next hour or so as we take a closer look at the trends, challenges, and opportunities for international recruitment as relating especially to China. This is our second webinar on this topic after the last time for India. We have 3 panelists today, each with very deep regional expertise. And I would just introduce the first one, Delia Hannigan, who is our Director of Education for India. So Delia, would you please start with this discussion by giving us a little bit of context and background about Sannam S4, what it is doing during this COVID-19, and what kind of challenges you are facing?
Yes, certainly. Thank you, Hongxia. And it's lovely to be here talking to you this morning in your time, colleagues in the US and in other parts of the world. Just to give you a little bit of background to me, although I am Director of Education for Sannam S4 in India, and normally I live in Delhi, I have extensive experience in the international education space, working for a UK university for many decades, and also for a US university in London, and then with universities in the Middle East and in New Zealand, as well as in India. When I was with my UK and US universities, I was responsible for global operations. So have many years experience of working in China. I've had the great pleasure of visiting China very often and recruiting many students and working with many partners in China. So it is very nice for me to be spending time talking again about China, although a lot of my time recently has been spent talking about India. So I just wanted to give you that context. And Sannam S4, one of the great things about working for Sannam S4 is that we have a global presence. So we are active in markets all around the world. So we have clients we are supporting in China, we have clients we're supporting in the US, as well as India and in other countries around the world. And those clients come from many, many different countries as well. So we are a truly global company. And while the pandemic has been a very challenging time for all of us, I think what it's led to is our clients and the stakeholders that we work with looking to innovate and looking to change and rise to those challenges and ensure that international education is still something that individuals all around the world can still take part in. We've just had to change some of the things and some of the ways in which we do it. And we at Sannam S4 have been working with those clients and stakeholders to achieve that. So we've watched many of our clients move a lot of their curriculum, a lot of their courses online. And that was a tremendous achievement in 2 to 3 weeks in many cases, to shift a whole university's offering online, to work together with colleagues to understand how you can reframe assessments, how you can ensure that the student experience is maintained in a different type of delivery mode. So lots and lots of changes going on. And now lots of opportunities to look at different ways of working in partnership together. So although it's a challenge and it's a difficult time, it's also a time for us all to look at different opportunities and maybe look for the positive things that will come out of this disruption. You know, can be a challenge, but it can also bring a lot of benefits. So we are very much at the heart of that, working with our clients, and it's great to be speaking to you this morning about one of the key markets for international activity, one of the key countries that we in the international space all think about, which is China. And we are, you know, very pleased to be working with our clients, looking at strategies, looking at new forms of collaboration, looking at ways in which they can protect the work that they do from disruption that will impact negatively on them or their students. So that's what we're doing.
Thank you very much, Delia. Thank you. So you mentioned China as a key market in the international education landscape. And I am very pleased today we have invited two panelists and from two leading key markets from the US and from the UK. So I would like to present Sufei Li, and she is the manager for international programs at the American Association for State Colleges and Universities. Many, many years experience Sufei has had in the past 30-some years. And she was educated actually in the higher ed in the UK, and then she has been working in the US. And then secondly, I would like to present Thomas Zhang, and he is the Assistant Director for International Recruitment at the University of Northampton at the United Kingdom. So with these two key markets, plus Delia's very broad international experience, I think we will have the chance to have many topics relating to China and international education covered today. We just have about an hour session, and from now on, we are going to perhaps have each of the panelists answer my moderated questions, and that would probably take up about 30 to 40 minutes. So we have sufficient time at the end to take questions from the audience. So we will start with perhaps the first question. And that would be, we really would like to listen to Sufei and Thomas to talk about the current sentiments from Chinese students, parents, and their universities, but also perhaps Chinese government and some of these agents for international organization. What is their sentiment for the Chinese student to study abroad? So perhaps we will start with Thomas and then followed by Sufei, and I welcome each of you perhaps to add a few words before you're answering the questions and just tell us a little bit about your background. Thank you very much.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I know it's morning in the US time. Now it's in the late evening in Beijing. Good evening from Beijing. My name is Thomas Zhang. I work for the University of Northampton. I studied in the UK as international students about nearly 20 years ago. Graduated with my master's, then I started work for the University of Northampton. I've been there for nearly 17 years as international officers, assistant director, senior international officer, assistant directors. It's a great honor to attend this webinar. I would like to share some of my experience and my views on the markets. I hope that you'll find that useful. In terms of I came back to Beijing about 2 weeks ago. I can feel the city, the country is it's very different from the last time I left, which is about half years ago. I can tell the pandemic really affected the country, of course, in the education sector as well. I've been talking to various students. Some of them are actually applied and will be studying with us at the University of Northampton. Some are potential students. I try to find out how the pandemic affect their decisions and how they'll be coping with the current situations. I've been told, there are three main challenges they're facing. One is the increasing difficulties and in making applications, as well as making the travel to abroad. This including many of our students, because of closure of the school, they find it difficult to get the paper ready for their applications. And also the closure of the IELTS center make it very difficult for them to get the new English sort of evidence to prove that they'll be able to meet the English language. And of course, the suspended of the visa sessions, visa part of the embassies, that all make things very, very difficult. And on top of that, it's very difficult. There's no flights. I mean, there are flights, but very, very few, limited travel flights, the flights between China and Europe. That's one of the difficulties and what worries them. And also there's a lot of concern, worries about, the well-beings and health and personal safeties abroad. There's some related to the COVID-19, but some are not really directly related. It's more relating to the political issues between, China and the Western countries, and China, including China with the US, Australia, and even UK. When you're in Beijing, when I'm here, I can see there is lots of propaganda, which is not really in favor of the building up of good relationships between the countries. The blaming of the virus and each others, and also, talk about some of the social unrest in the Western countries that all created panicking. But also on top of these two, there's a financial matters because of the pandemic. It really affected lots of business, especially if they're in the service sectors. As you can see in the Western countries, all shops are closed and restaurants shut up or close up. And that affect people. If the parents are working in this sector, they're really seriously affected. When we talk about the students, we sort of get sort of the views on how they're gonna make the decision, whether they will carry on going abroad or they will defer. We can see from one end they will just cancel the study completely. To the other end, they will go regardless. But we find lots of students actually in the middle. They were not making decisions until the situation get a little bit more clearer, whether they will be flight to the US, to the UK, whether the embassies will be open by the time they want to submit their visas, and whether they're getting quiet down in the Western countries. So they don't want to make that decisions until later dates. From as a recruiter, University of Northampton, we see the numbers drop. This is just to reflect the same of the whole sectors. But for those, we call it must-go students, they still go. If they're taking, say, undergraduate, they have to go, because we are targeting at the students from international school or the students who have done the part of the UK program, AASCU, HND, for example. They have to study in the UK for 1 year to get their degree, so they will go anyway. But on the other side, for those non-essential program we are offering, for example, the short-term program or international exchange program, summer program, the number dropped. Basically, the market's dead. Before I finish, I just want to share some of the survey result just released by the British Council. They would like to know, this is based on 9,000 students. The first question is about how likely you will cancel or delay your plan to study abroad. it's about 21%, 20 to 21% of students say they are more likely not to go. But on the positive side, about 40% say they will still go regardless. So, and in the middle is the middle bit. They're about 60, no, it's about 40, 50 is they're not decided. And the second question is, what's your main worry? What's your main concern about studying abroad? Personal safety is on the top of the list. And the third question is about, if you can't go in September, what would you prefer to do? Do you want to do online in September, then start in January, or you prefer to defer to January? I mean, I think for master students, 70% say they prefer to defer into January, and 40% of the undergraduates say they prefer to defer. So you will see that reflects very much of the Chinese students' view on the pandemic and how that's going to affect their decisions to study abroad, study in the UK. This is not just to the UK. I think it reflects more or less the whole markets about study abroad. So there's a lot of uncertainty, but there's still a large percentage of students still thinking about going in September. That's just my view on it, and I'll pass it on to Sophia.
Thank you, Thomas. Let me just interject here, and you have given us a very good overview about the kind of difficulties and also sentiments that is among the Chinese students. And I would like to call Sophie perhaps now give us a different perspective from the US, but also specifically on some of these alternatives the universities are offering to these international students. Of course, including Chinese students, such as online class, digital learning. So Sophie, would you like to just share with us what you have been hearing and what you have been observing about these feedbacks to these different alternative learning modules? Thank you.
Thank you. I'll be happy to. Good morning. Thank you, Hongxia, Thomas, and Delia. Nice to see everybody. And my name is Sufei Li, and I'm the manager of international programs at AASCU in the United States, American Association of State Colleges and Universities. I manage a China program. It's a joint administration program called the 1+2+1 program with Chinese partner organizations, and we've been running for 20 years, and I have close to 30 years experience in international higher education. As Hongxia mentioned, I also studied in the UK, University of London, for my master's degree. So it's a great honor to invite me to join this special group. So glad to see everybody. And I completely agree with what Thomas described about the situation in China. And I think it's not China, so many countries are facing the similar challenges and problems. What I want to share with everybody here is about the students and institutions from the US perspectives. AASCU institutions, AASCU has more than 300 member institutions. We are National Association for State Universities and Colleges. And the program I manage is working with the Chinese partners. Through this partner, we work with over 120 Chinese institutions. And in the US, we have about 40 American institutions, state universities in this China-specific program. Starting with the pandemic, we've seen all the problems, and we know lots of cancelings of the international students returning home, the study abroad program canceled. So what now, since the beginning of in February, move on to now, we see so many changes, and those changes are really too fast for us to understand, to focus, and to follow up. So using our program as example, we have tried to help our students, as Thomas mentioned about the students here in the US, or those return to China during the spring break, and even now. It's very hard for them also. So how we should handle, how we should do as a recruiter or as an international, senior international officer, SIO in the US we call it. How do we handle the situation? Because the international officers are in the front line dealing with the international education on US campuses. So they represent the university, the attitude, the support to international students. For the Chinese part, I think the first one is that we really have to understand the situation in China, how the parents are thinking, how the Chinese students are thinking, and how the Chinese institutions are working and their intention, how they want to work with us. So when you understand it, as Thomas mentioned clearly, students, a lot of them are just wait and see because on this uncertainty, they cannot make decisions. And which is true for a lot of American universities, they are really can't make final decisions either, because a lot of our students are asking, especially when they return, they were asking, are we going to take online courses? Because are you going to offer online or in-person instruction? The universities are moving forward as fast as they could, because there's so many uncertainties on the campus also. So we have to understand what's going on in China, among the institutions, among the students, among the parents, and also work with our institutions in the US, try to meet their needs, to set up the policy, provide the services, and provide the support to help the students. So by understanding what's going on there and what's most of the students' intention, because they couldn't make final decisions, but they want wait and see. And online instruction, it seems a very positive solution to most of the international students, which the US institutions could offer. So we can see our institutions are making steps to provide online instructions to the international students and to specifically for my program to Chinese students. But when you're doing this, there are lots of issues, especially Hongxia mentioned about online instruction. We know now a lot of topics we're talking about how to make an effective learning through online instruction. That's a very critical part, because faculty's teaching method, technical support from each different institutions, and the student learning habit. And it also, especially when you offer the online instruction to international students who may not be very familiar with your technical platform, the technology you're using to deliver the instruction, you really need to have a supporting team to those students if you really want to keep them in the program. And also, international students have the language issues. For a lot of countries, the language is not English as a medium. So you really need to provide the English language support through online to the students. we had a special webinar, just try to help the administrators, the coordinators, the institution instructors, the teaching faculties, how to use the online instruction through various support and aid to the students. In that way, we could ensure the quality of online learning and also the assessment of the student learning outcome. That's another way we have to discuss. So our experiences and a suggestion is that it will be more efficient, more effective if you can work through the partnerships. Luckily, we have a good partner in China, and they are really the big support by doing the instructions, the organizing the training sessions, to organize the, to provide the resources. So we just need to bring our faculty, bring our the coordinators into this session to provide the training to the students, to the teaching faculties, try to make sure the students will understand, will use this platform to have the access to the proper teaching learning method. So what I want to share is this communication through the partnerships is really very critical. I can share more examples later on if we have extra time, because I think online learning seems to become, it will be part of our normal now, the new norm. So how we use this technology, use this platform to the international students is really, there's so many things we need to discuss. And if we use well, it will be a very powerful recruiting technology or recruiting method to make sure to tell the parents the learning coming to our campus, and we could provide sufficient learning, and we can still provide the education you're looking for to your students. Thank you very much, and I'll be happy to answer questions later on.
Thank you so much, Sophie. I really would like to have the time to discuss more about several topics you have just mentioned or raised, such as the quality of online education and the quality of assessment of the outcome of the online education. So before we do that, we have a few other questions, and we will try to cover these questions first, and then we will go back to your points. Perhaps along this line, after UK and US perspectives, we would like to invite Delia to maybe speak a little bit about some of these competing markets, such as the New Zealand and also Australia. Please, Delia, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Hongxia. Yes, and just to sort of to pick up some of the points that Sufei Li and Thomas made, that partnerships are going to be very, very important in this new space. And some of the examples I have about how competitor countries are approaching the challenge, some of those are based around using your partnerships strategically, using your partnerships tactically to allow you to support students. Because at the end of the day, whatever we're doing has to have students at the heart of it and making the best experience for them that we can. Obviously, China is a huge market for all of the countries that are the main destinations for international education. So if we look at the US is the #1 destination for students coming from China. But you also have other countries that are significant players in this market, and are popular choices for Chinese students looking for their study abroad experience. And there are also countries that have extensive partnerships and extensive networks across China, in which they've been working for many decades. So if we look first of all at Australia, Australia is a country that has a massive investment in the international education space in China. 1.7 million Chinese students study in Australia on Australian university courses, so a huge number. some billions and billions and billions of Australian dollars are flowing into Australia from Chinese students who are investing in their education. And of course, they and New Zealand were two of the first countries to really see the impact of COVID, because China had the impact first. Those countries were much nearer in their academic year start date. So February was when the big intakes are in those countries. So they've actually had a few months ahead of the US and the UK and Canada in terms of how they've organized themselves to respond to these challenges of students not being able to fly back to take up their university courses, either as new students or as continuing students. So they've had to deal with this a little bit earlier. And as a result, they are able to have thought about through some ideas. So for example, in New Zealand, what we saw was immediate responses from the institutions, first of all, to provide information to students, keep supporting them, keep talking to them, having student services available to listen to their challenges, moving all of their delivery online so that students could at least start their semesters when they thought they were going to. But what we've seen as we've progressed through these months is moving away from that as a stopgap measure. So one of our New Zealand university clients has now set up 2 delivery centers with their partners in China, and they've got 550 students enrolled at those 2 centers where they're able to take their courses. So, you know, addressing some of those issues that Sufei raised about the way students feel comfortable or uncomfortable with online learning. So they're getting their university content, but they're in a campus environment. They've got some of those student experiences. They're not sitting in their own bedroom on their own, just working away. So this university moved very swiftly and managed to set up with their partners 2 venues where students from around China can come and be on that campus and take their New Zealand university courses. So that was a very swift response. And a university also, to deal with some of the challenges that they were facing around students being worried about their assessments, because online learning is not just about lift and shift, you know, video your lecture and stick it out online. It's about how you are actually delivering the learning outcomes. So you have to totally rethink your pedagogy to be able to, you know, impact the learning outcomes in the right way. So universities did that, and one university took on board the fact that students had these really big worries. I don't want to take this course online because I'm not ready to. I won't perform at my best. I won't be able to get the marks that I need that will demonstrate the sort of ability I've got. So they, apart from reassessing some of their assessments, they also gave the students a comfort blanket. Now, this is a difficult thing to do, but they basically gave everyone a 10% uplift in their marks who was taking this assessment online for the first time. Addressing that anxiety, that uncertainty that students had, and making them feel that the institution was listening and was on their side. So I think that is an important example of some of those things. Other things that Australian universities are thinking of doing because they want the students to come back to Australia. But, you know, we have quarantine situations, we have borders, they're not open, not just China. It's difficult to get a flight. But also when you get that flight, you might not get into the country you're going to, even if you've managed to get your visa. So universities are thinking of chartering planes, and I'm listening to them, hearing that from my networks from Australia and from the UK, where a university will be together with another university, will charter a plane to bring their students in, which, you know, is pretty spectacular. I don't think that's something that we would have thought we would be thinking of doing a few months ago. So there are some of the things that your competitors are thinking of doing. They're really, you know, coming up with solutions. Other Canadian universities where they're saying, okay, you can get your visa, you can get to Canada. We are going to make sure that you don't have to worry about quarantining yourself, because we're going to set up our halls of residence in a way that You can quarantine in those halls. They will meet all the government requirements. We will ensure that you get food, that there's someone to look after you, and that you have an experience that is, is stress-free. Other areas that your competitor countries are addressing, and I know that US universities are doing this as well, is around things such as looking at your messaging. Some of those points that Thomas picked up there that students are worried about, health and safety, safety on campus in particular, I think was mentioned. So when you are thinking of your student communications, which you should also be thinking about, not just in English, but also in Mandarin and Cantonese, because parents will be worried about this and they may not be as comfortable. So think about things like that. What is your messaging? How are you addressing those worries that we've just had identified? And give practical information for students. I think the other thing that I wanted to touch on is around some of that. Some governments are really supporting their universities, and so, for example, in the UK, you've got a pilot going ahead with the university's JISC, which is the group of the sector of UK universities that looks after information systems and technology, have just launched a pilot last week where 3 UK universities will work with them to look at how the VLEs can be opened up for China, and so that Chinese students don't have any challenges around accessing online. So if you are in a consortium of universities that can do something like that, then look at the JISC trial that is coming out of the UK. So we're seeing lots of innovation around the world. I know there's lots of innovation in the US as well, and examples of best practice that people can pick up. My final point, and I'm conscious that I'm taking a lot of time, is around how do you address some of those issues about if a student has not been able to take their IELTS exam or has not been able to take their final assessment. When you're making an admissions decision, and I've been an admissions tutor, and I know, you're always looking to make a decision based on, can this student be successful? Are they ready to be able to be successful on this course? And you use the exam results as evidence of that. What other evidence can you get? And so for IELTS, the test centers are closed. IELTS has got an online at-home type of version. It's not an absolute IELTS test replica, but it gives you some indication. But more importantly, TOEFL. TOEFL were very fast to move and to bring forward a proctored exam that you can feel quite secure about in terms of its rigor, where the student can take that exam online at home, so that they are able to provide you that documentation, that reassurance that they meet your requirements. Of course, opening up the visa centres is a matter for government, and that's something that universities can't dictate about. But these are some of the ways in which you can start to prepare and think about how you can help students choose you and help students choose the USA as a study destination. There's some of the examples from competitor countries. I do have others, and as Sufei said, I'm happy to talk about those later if anyone would like to know. But I'm going to hand back to Hongxia now for some more questions.
Thank you so much, Delia. This is a wonderful, comprehensive discussion about some of these competing markets and the kind of innovations and best practices so far in coping with these challenges associated with COVID-19. Thank you for that. And we will hopefully have some more time to talk more about it. Now, I would like to call Thomas because now you are based in Beijing. Yeah. And you have that on-the-ground perspective. Tell us about what is the reality of the Chinese campuses right now. What are they doing? We have read news and heard about news from Beijing about some of the second waves in some of the cities, including Beijing. So are the universities open? What kind of situation they are facing? Are they actually carry on the learning? And just give us some perhaps good perspective Thank you.
Right. Okay. Well, as you know, I'm in Beijing. China is the first countries that got into trouble, into the ID what with the pandemic. But the good thing is, because it's start first, it get out first. The most of the Chinese cities getting out of the pandemic in late February, early March. Things back to normalities. But the universities and colleges remains closed. As a university, University of Northampton, our main method, well, the recruitment channel is not through agency, it's through the partnerships. So I know this very well, and unfortunately, this is not really in our favor, because so far, I don't know any of our partners, the campus reopened, which means we wouldn't be able to get in touch with their students, or we wouldn't be able to arrange face-to-face meetings with the students in our partner universities as we normally do. Most of the Chinese universities have adopted online learning and teaching, or the way that not normally used in the past. I think since the outbreak of this pandemic, Chinese students, and also the Chinese universities start to get used to this new way of teaching and learning, and as I said, the things are getting quiet down, but the students still stayed at home and doing their courses. And in just about a few weeks or a month ago, some of the provinces allowed their final year students to go back to their universities for graduation ceremony or finish off their unfinished part of their study. But unfortunately, the second wave came. Just about a week ago or two, or maybe 10 days ago, it outbreak. The new cases appeared in some of the part of Beijing, mainly around a market. These
I think we've just lost Thomas. Yeah, I think just frozen.
We should outreach Thomas, and for now, maybe I can chip in.
Yes, I'm sure it'd be great.
Maybe to talk about some of these Chinese university, these international partnerships. There are about, I think, between 15 and 16 right now universities in China, which are joint venture universities. And I work for New York University, Shanghai. So I can give that kind of perspective, that these kind of joint venture universities, they have very much swiftly adopted online learning since the breakout of COVID-19, which actually the closure of the universities in China was just after the Chinese New Year. So the campus mostly, they were closed, and they only reopened in the last few weeks. What happened is that we actually continued the learning with online instruction, but more so towards the end of the spring semester, it's a mixture of hybrid module of learning. And so that actually proved to be mostly very well run and well appreciated by the students and their parents. So one positive outcome from this COVID-19 pandemic for these kind of university, which are joint venture universities, like NYU Shanghai, Duke Kunshan, Ningbo, Nottingham, and so on and so forth, it's that the application for our university for the coming year has been increased substantially. We have a lot more students, a lot more parents, especially they're exploring what is the feasibility of sending our students to study at this joint venture university, so we can in some way counter the influence or the impact of COVID-19, so our children or our students would not have to go to another country with so many uncertainties in the world right now. So that is a positive outcome for our university, at least at NYU Shanghai. I know that we have been really receiving a lot of more inquiries and also interest to study at NYU Shanghai. So I heard a sound. I don't know whether that's Thomas is coming back.
I think he's. I think he is back with us. I think he said on the chat that he's back. But
Okay,
I think that's a really interesting observation, Hongxia, that that parents are looking to sort of maybe go to the JV universities that you've described, and I think that mirrors certainly our experiences in India, where we are being told that the private universities in India are seeing increased applications of 50 up to 100% as parents and students think about a plan B. And it's fabulous that you in China have got that plan B available on the ground, that NYU is there, that Nottingham is there, that Liverpool, Shanghai is there. So there's lots of those things that are not available at the moment in India, but that China has that option.
Exactly, yes. So if I may ask Thomas perhaps to wrap up your discussion about the reality of Chinese campus right now in China. Are you there, Thomas? Hello?
I think we've lost him again.
Sorry about that. Then maybe we should continue to our discussion to the next topic, and hoping that Thomas would surface again. Sorry about the technological disconnection here. I think would be very interesting if we can now switch our focus. We have been talking about Chinese students and the inbound market to UK, US, Australia, New Zealand, and other countries. Perhaps now we can talk a little bit about the other side of international education, which is outbound. Students from the US, the UK, Australia, and New Zealand, and Canada, and many other countries, they are going to some other countries to enrich their study. So perhaps I can call Sufei to discuss about the internationalization on American university campuses and how this COVID-19 is impacting American students to study abroad. If you could talk about some kind of reality check, but also some ideas that you may have at your end as experts, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Hongxia. I'll be glad to. And I think in the past few years, the study abroad trend becomes really popular, and the US institutions realize that the students really need to participate into study abroad to know the world, to understand different culture, to learn different languages. So it has been really a successful program for many universities. However, we know that the impact is starting March. Fortunately, that was during the spring break. Starting from March until now, IIE did a survey, and the different organizations all did survey. Most of the campuses call the students back, cancel the program if they have students abroad already, and then later on they cancel the summer study abroad program. And now most of our schools are talking about doing online, explore the possibility of doing online virtual study abroad program. So this really, it has a tremendous impact, negative impact really for most of the institutions. Financial is one part, and this creates all those problems for our campuses, especially the state universities and colleges. And another issue is a lot of students, they try to use the study abroad, whether they can get some transfer credits to bring into their degree requirement program so they can finish. It will not delay their graduation. That's another thing. That's the issue. US institutions has been tried very hard to help the students. Using China as example, we do see the increase of American students going to China for study abroad program in the past few years, and then we see a drop. And the reason is a lot of American students, they try to use the time during the summer to finish the program to graduate in time, not to extend it more, so they can enter the job market. So how to help those students? Provide the experiences that through study abroad to give them transfer credits and to help them in the future employment is something that we've been working with. How to establish a program where we really have a hands-on experiences to help basically how to attract the students into the program. We've been working through different organizations, through different government, like a State Department, the Fulbright programs, Education USA also got involved with a lot of our schools and providing support. We know the issue for the AASCU school students are the financial is also a very big problem for a lot of students. So right now, it seems that recently we come up with all sorts of solutions, but with the impact of COVID-19, we have worked, lots of effort has been like put on hold now. Specifically, one example is we have worked with the Chinese CSC, Chinese Scholarship Council, through the Chinese Embassy. We developed a short-term study abroad program for all the American institutions by faculty-led study abroad for 6 weeks in China. If you have a partnership and it gets approved, all the students in this program will receive scholarships when you go to China for the tuitions, the room and board, everything. And once you got this approval, it will last a few years. We worked out this with the Chinese Scholarship Council and the Chinese Embassy right around the beginning of the COVID-19. So now it's very hard to promote to the students. However, I think because the application approval process will take a while, so it might be a good resources to share with the other institutions. If you want to start to look at this program to involve your students in the study abroad program, it will be credit will be transferred. You have hands-on learning experiences for the students, and if it's approved by the CSC, the faculties will the leading faculties will lead the program, and the students will receive the scholarships. So those kind of examples, we really need to figure out how to use these resources to provide help, support to our American students during the COVID-19 and post-COVID-19, especially when the online learning becomes the norm, how to use those resources to utilize these resources effectively. So we are trying to work with various organizations to see online learning. We talk with many, quite a few companies who can provide the technical support, provide a virtual exchange, international student exchanges, and to bring the students, at least we cannot do the face-to-face instruction. You cannot travel at this moment, but have the connections there with your partners with the countries you have been working with. So when after the clear of this virus, we believe someday it will be available for all of us to travel again. Then let's work through this connection, and we are still there. The program is still there. So those impact is being very negative, but we still hope, because when we communicate with our partners, the passion is still there. They want to work with us. Our institutions welcome international students, and when we work with a partner in China, we also work with through the General Council in India. We have different countries in like Brazil, Argentina. They all those organizations, the institutions, they're willing to work with us. They like to send students, and they like to establish the connections to do faculty exchanges, to do professional development for their faculties, and to establish the student exchanges. However, with this current limit, if we keep the link, keep the connection, continuously keep the connection, that's very critical. And then hopefully very soon we will start the exchange again. So I think at this time we see those barriers, we have those problems, but communication is really the key that we should keep in mind. Work with your partners, communicating with your partners, that's very important. And trying to be flexible and innovative. Those are the two things we've been thinking about, and we've been trying to do through our China programs. And we have some good examples we could share when we have time. Thank you, Hongxia.
Thank you, Sophie. And I have been checking the questions from the audience, and I think there is a very good connection between what we have been discussing and one question which I think stands out. It's very, very good. And I am very conscientious of our time limit too. And this question really, in some way, summarize and connect some of our discussions too. Sophie and Thomas and Delia, you each of your presentation discussion touched upon the important role of partnership. So this question actually relates to that. It's given the, I would say, the difficulty ahead in terms of the economic outlook for all of these countries, whether it's China, whether it's US, UK, and many countries, and given the disruption of student mobility and the new norm of online education and online recruitment and so on and so forth, what is the role of Sannam S4 in facilitating and also helping to build partnerships? So perhaps Delia, you can just share with us a little bit more about what Sannam can do and has been doing in this context.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I would totally support what Sufei was saying. And I know that, that Thomas touched on as well, that partnerships are really going to be the way forward as we work through the impact of the pandemic, and opportunities to have new types of partnerships, both between two countries, but also involving more countries in consortiums. And what we are doing with our clients, Hongxia, is we are able to, because we are on the ground in the countries that we work in, I have colleagues around the world who are on the ground, we are able to give you real insight and information as to what's happening. When you are looking for partners, we can connect you to partners that match your mission and that are, we are confident that will be, the right type of partner for you. So we will be your partner as you are looking for those links in countries, supporting you to understand the regulatory framework, because obviously, if you're going to work in a new country with its own rules and regulations, you need to have an understanding about that, both the academic and the higher education regulatory environment, but also the regulatory environment for doing business in that country, for knowing how you can, you know, have a contract with a partner and work out how you can make that that work properly. So we are able to provide access to partnership opportunities. We're able to work with the governments in the countries we work in so that we can ensure that you are tapping into any of those types of opportunity that Sufei was just talking about for potential government support for these partnerships. And we're also able to ensure that you understand the legal and regulatory framework that you're in. And because we're all practitioners, you know, so I've done this for real, sitting at a university desk as well. We understand the challenges that you've got, the, you know, the worries that you might have, the needs that you've got. So you are talking to people who have been in that position and are able to support you through that whole process. And we also want these partnerships to be sustainable. And to make a partnership sustainable, it's really important that it's mutual and that both sides are getting benefits out of it. And as I said earlier, at the end of the day, all of us that are in higher education are working for our students and for their experience and their career development. And as international educators at Sannam S4, that's at the heart of what we do, working with you around the world. And partnership was always one of the most enjoyable things to be involved in. As you see a partnership grow and blossom, it's a wonderful experience, and you see the impact it has on both institutions and their students. So it's very important. It will be increasingly important, and lots of innovation will happen, and we will, you know, be there to support our clients all the way through.
Thank you very much, Delia. I want to say, as we conclude this 1 hour session, it has been wonderful to hear the different perspectives from China, from US, from UK, Australia, New Zealand, and we hope this COVID-19 situation will be improved, and there would be more students who are able to utilize the value of international education. I myself is a beneficiary of that, and I am hoping that more and more universities, they can also utilize the wonderful support and service from a firm like Sannam S4, which has been outstanding. And we have a very dedicated staff team. They work from our offices based in India, in the UK, in the US, and hopefully soon another new office in Australia and in New Zealand. So let me say my gratitude for each of our panelists today, Delia, Thomas, and Sufei. Thank you for your time, for your inputs, and hopefully we will see another series from Sannam S4 coming out very soon on another very important constituency, and that is Latin America. So we are a global firm and we have global perspectives here. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Bye.